Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be focusing on something very personal and very intriguing, which is your health, longevity, and how to, well, potentially mitigate the risks of all those age-related diseases we worry about.
Fascinating stuff.
It really is. And we've got a lot of very interesting material to get through. We've got your genetic data, right?
Right.
And we have your medical test results, which we're very grateful for. Thanks for sharing those with
Of
us.
course.
And then adding to that, we've got excerpts from a book by an immunologist that explores all kinds of factors relating to health and aging. So quite a broad range of data points to dive into.
That's a great way to put it.
So I think it's safe to say that you're pretty curious about how to, really maximize your health span, right?
Absolutely.
And we want to help you sort of navigate through all this data without getting too overwhelmed.
That's really the goal here.
Now, the book kind of jumps right in with a pretty big question. What exactly is death?
Well, the author really kind of nails it down. He says it's the irreversible loss of consciousness and all brainstem function, the activity in the brainstem. So essentially, when the brain stops functioning, that's it. Sometimes the heart stops first, but that's when it's over.
Okay, so that's pretty clear, the final destination. But what about the road to get there, the aging process itself? He compares aging to an old, like a beat-up car, right?
Exactly. He uses this analogy of an old banger, I think is how he puts it.
Old banger, I love that.
It illustrates the damage model of aging. So just like a car accumulates, rust and wear and tear over time, our bodies experience this kind of gradual accumulation of cellular damage. It's what leads to decline.
So it's like a very gradual process of things breaking down. He also talks about damage to DNA and something called epigenetic changes as factors in aging. Could you unpack those a bit for us?
Sure, so think of DNA as this like instruction manual, right?
Okay, yeah.
And epigenetic markers are these switches that sit on top of the DNA. They can turn genes on or off.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's based on environmental cues. These epigenetic markers increase as we age. And while their original purpose is to help us adapt, the accumulation of these markers can actually disrupt how our cells function. It's a pretty complex area of research.
So these epigenetic changes, they're kind of like a response to our environment. Then there's the big baddie of aging inflammation.
It's a major player. The author emphasizes that inflammation is a key driver of organ aging, and it's linked to so many common risk factors. We're talking smoking, overeating, drinking too much alcohol, even stress can contribute to inflammation.
It's like the common thread that connects all of these different aspects of aging together.
It is, and to illustrate this, the author uses a really interesting analogy. He compares the immune system's reaction to sugar overload to a kid going crazy with a bag of candy. Humorous, but insightful too, right?
I love that. Very relatable. Now, you've shared your genetic data with us, and the author also talks about his experience with genetic testing. What's the big takeaway there? What did he learn?
Well, both he and Dr. Adam Rutherford, who's a geneticist he interviews in the book, they emphasize this idea that genetics is really more about probabilities than certainties.
So it's not a crystal ball.
Definitely not a crystal ball. It's more like understanding the potential predispositions you have, not predicting your predetermined fate. It's complex.
So genes give us like a roadmap with lots of possible routes.
Exactly, and it's ultimately our environment and importantly our choices that really influence which path we end up taking.
So again, we see the environment playing a key role.
Oh, absolutely. Like the old saying goes, genetic loads the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger.
Okay, that's a powerful way to put it. So let's dive into your medical test results now. You were very brave to share those with us.
Oh, thanks.
And it just so happens that the author also underwent this full-body diagnostic checkup. So I'm curious, what was his experience like?
Well, he had some pretty interesting observations, particularly about that white coat syndrome,
Oh, yeah.
where your blood pressure just shoots up as soon as you step into a medical setting.
Oh, I know that feeling too. Every time, even if I think it's pretty calm. So it's pretty common.
Very common, and he talks about it a lot. He also delves into the history of blood testing, like from the early days of simply identifying blood groups to the development of those automated testing machines in the 1950s. Amazing advancements.
What about urine tests? Did he talk about those at all?
He did. He humorously recalls how awkward it can be to, provide a sample in those tiny containers.
I can definitely relate to that. It's a challenge.
Oh, definitely. And, he also explains the science behind all these tests, how some directly measure chemical components, while others use these things called biosensors to detect specific substances. It's pretty fascinating, the variety of techniques.
So with all these tests, can we just assume the results are always accurate?
Well, he actually cautions against jumping to conclusions based on a single test result. There's always the possibility of outliers, especially when they're running a whole battery of tests. It's more about interpreting the data cautiously and in context.
So a single data point doesn't tell the whole story.
Exactly. It's the bigger picture that matters.
Okay, let's zero in on the heart now, since that features prominently in both your medical data and the book. What kind of insights does the author offer about this, vital organ?
Well, he starts with this unique challenge for his readers. He tells them to try squeezing a tennis ball 60 times a minute to, simulate the workload of the heart.
Oh, wow, that sounds tiring already.
Right. He really paints a picture of how hard the heart works. And then he goes into a lot of detail about the heart's anatomy and function, like the four chambers, the intricate network of blood vessels, the whole circulatory system that keeps us going. He even points out that the actual anatomical heart looks nothing like that symbolic heart shape we associate with love.
That is interesting. What about stress? How does stress affect this incredible machine?
He talks about the role of adrenaline and cortisol, those fight or flight hormones. They trigger a rapid heartbeat. It's essential for dealing with, acute danger. But if this stress response is chronically activated, it can be very harmful for your heart.
So managing stress is a key part of keeping our hearts healthy.
Absolutely. He also dives into atherosclerosis, which is that gradual buildup of plaque in the arteries. He highlights the role of LDL cholesterol, what we call the bad cholesterol, and surprise, surprise, inflammation.
Inflammation again.
It's everywhere. And he connects this back to your cholesterol levels, emphasizing that it's really important to be aware of those individual cardiovascular risks.
So knowing our risk factors is essential. Did he talk much about advances in heart surgery?
Oh, absolutely. He delves into the evolution of heart surgery from the early days to modern marvels like bypass surgery, pacemaker implantation, even heart transplantation. It's amazing what they can do now.
It really is incredible how far medical science has come. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the lungs and respiratory health. The author mentions his experience with a lung function test, and you've provided some data in that area as well. What did he find out?
Well, he describes his encounter with a spirometer, which is that device that measures lung function. Apparently, it involves a lot of, forceful exhaling.
Sounds like a workout.
It can be, and he talks about that. He explains how spirometry works and the importance of the measurements, like the FEV1, which shows how much air you can force out in 1 second.
Interesting. What about COPD? Did he discuss that much?
He gives a really good overview of COPD, describing its symptoms, and really emphasizes the impact of smoking and air pollution.
Smoking and pollution, those two just keep popping up.
I know, right? And he doesn't just focus on lung cancer either. He discusses the broader harm of smoking to the heart during pregnancy, really your overall well-being. It's pretty sobering.
It's a strong message. Now, what about air pollution? Did he have any specific insights there?
He had this fascinating conversation with Professor Frank Kelly, who is an expert on air pollution. They actually traced the history of air pollution in London, starting with that infamous Great Smog of 1952. They talk about how air quality has actually improved a lot since then, but it's still a global issue.
Yeah, something we still need to tackle. What about specific lung diseases that are triggered by, things we breathe in, like particles and allergens?
He mentions hypersensitivity pneumonitis. It's a whole group of conditions caused by inhaling certain substances. And there are some really strange examples. Pigeon fancier's lung, cheese worker's lung, even hot tub lung.
Hot tub lung, that's a new one.
It is. It's caused by breathing in certain bacteria that grew in poorly maintained hot tubs.
Good to know. Maybe time to give my hot tub a good cleaning. Now I think it's time to talk about a topic that I think weighs heavily on many people's minds: cancer. The author actually shares his personal experience with skin cancer. It's a disease that can evoke a lot of anxiety, understandably.
It is. He delves into the origin of the word cancer, which comes from the Latin word for crab. Apparently, it's a reference to how those cancerous tumors kind of spread out like crab legs.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
It is, and he goes on to explain those basic principles of cancer, uncontrolled cell growth and its potential to invade surrounding tissues.
And he's a big advocate for using sunscreen, right, to prevent skin cancer.
Huge advocate. He really stresses that using sunscreen is essential for prevention. And he goes into detail about different types of sunscreen and how they work.
So no excuses for skipping sunscreen, even on a cloudy day.
Exactly. He also discusses the fact that cigarette smoke is carcinogenic, breaking down the harmful effects of those nasty components: nicotine, carbon monoxide, and tar.
Another reason to steer clear of cigarettes. Now, what about diet? Did he connect diet to cancer at all?
He does specifically address the role of diet in colon cancer. He talks about how eating red meat is linked to a higher risk of polyps forming, and of course he emphasizes the importance of getting a colonoscopy for early detection.
So a balanced diet, important not just for weight management, but also for cancer prevention.
Absolutely. He also talks about something called infectious cancer.
Infectious cancer, what's that?
Basically, it means certain viruses can actually trigger certain types of cancer. He talks about HPV, EBV, HBV. Pretty wild, right?
It is? I had no idea. So viruses can play a part in this too. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a relatively new area of research, but it's becoming more and more apparent. And then, he goes on to trace the history of cancer treatment from those early surgical attempts to all the modern approaches that we have now.
I'm assuming we've come a long way since the days of Hippocrates.
Oh, for sure. He discusses chemotherapy, radiotherapy, explaining how they work, what the potential side effects are. And then he talks about immunotherapy, which is a newer approach that's really promising, especially those checkpoint inhibitors.
Checkpoint inhibitors, what are those?
Think of them as a way to release the brakes on our immune system so it can better recognize and attack those cancer cells. He highlights the work of James Allison and Tasuku Honjo, who actually won a Nobel Prize for their research in this area.
That's amazing. It sounds like there's real hope for cancer treatment moving forward.
There really is. He even mentions therapeutic vaccines and CAR-T cell therapy as these emerging treatments that are super promising.
Okay, let's change gears again and talk about the brain. Cognitive health, it's something that worries many people as they age. What did the author have to say about that?
He explores the brain, that incredible complexity and the anxieties we all have about age-related cognitive decline. He starts by talking about neurons and glia, the two main types of brain cells.
It's amazing how much we're still learning about the brain.
I know, right? It's incredible. He talks about brain connectivity, how it changes as we age. He compares it to a map that slowly fades over time. Pretty powerful imagery.
Yeah, it really is. What about dementia? That's a big concern for a lot of people.
He defines dementia as a whole cluster of symptoms. Memory loss, of course, but also cognitive impairment and difficulty with those everyday activities.
So it's not just about forgetting where you put your keys.
No, it's much broader than that. He explains all the different types of dementia: Alzheimer's disease, valvular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, frontotemporal dementia. They each have their own unique characteristics and challenges.
Now, we've talked about inflammation a lot. Does that play a role in dementia at all?
He does discuss the potential link between inflammation and dementia, citing examples like, HIV infection and its impact on cognitive function. So it seems inflammation might be a contributing factor in at least some cases of dementia.
So keeping our brains from getting inflamed could be a key strategy for maintaining cognitive health. What about all those brain training games? Do they actually help?
He's pretty skeptical, to be honest, admits the research isn't really conclusive. It seems like they might offer some benefits, but they're not a guaranteed way to prevent dementia.
Okay, so maybe not a magic bullet. Now, let's talk about diet and supplements. There's a lot of hype out there about miracle diets and longevity potions. Does the author buy into any of that?
He's very skeptical of any one diet or supplement holding the key to immortality. He relies on scientific evidence and, his own personal experiences. He recognizes that our bodies are complex systems and they don't respond to those kind of quick fixes.
So no magic bullet for aging. What about the microbiome? He mentions that a lot.
Ah, yes, the microbiome. He's very fascinated by it. It's that vast community of bacteria that live in and on us, especially in the gut.
Right, I've heard a lot about that recently. What's his take?
Well, he actually experimented with altering his own gut microbiome, tried a high-fiber diet with a lot of fermented foods. He talks about his experience, but he also emphasizes that microbiome research is incredibly complex. There's a real lack of standardized methods. It's really hard to interpret the data.
So it's still early days for microbiome research.
In a lot of ways, it is. He even had a conversation with Mr. James Kinross, a surgeon who's an expert on the microbiome. And Mr. Kinross actually cautions against, overhyping the field. He says we need more robust studies.
So lots of potential there, but we need more definitive answers. Now let's talk about metabolic health, specifically diabetes and obesity. Those are major health concerns. And thankfully, both your medical data and the book go into some detail about these conditions. What insights can we gain from his research?
Well, first he explains how insulin works to regulate blood sugar levels. It's the key hormone that lets our cells absorb glucose from our blood.
Insulin is essential for maintaining that balance.
It is. He differentiates between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, highlighting how type 1 is an autoimmune disease, while type 2 is often linked to lifestyle factors.
So very different conditions.
Exactly. Different causes, different approaches to managing them. And he talks about the dangers of both hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, and hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar. Maintaining those stable blood sugar levels is crucial for overall health.
And it relates back to your own blood sugar data.
It does. He really emphasizes the importance of monitoring and managing blood sugar levels, especially if you have diabetes.
I know that diabetes can lead to some very serious complications. Does he address that?
He does. He explains how high blood sugar can actually damage blood vessels, leading to increased risk of heart disease, kidney problems, a whole host of complications.
So it's not just about managing blood sugar day to day, but preventing those long-term problems.
Absolutely. And then he goes on to talk about the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes, emphasizing the role of lifestyle in both conditions.
So maintaining a healthy weight through diet and exercise is crucial for preventing both diabetes and its complications.
He acknowledges that weight management can be incredibly challenging. It's not just about willpower, it's a very complex interplay of social and personal factors.
Okay, let's dive into those lifestyle interventions that can make a difference for health and longevity. He talks about fasting, exercise, even the role of technology.
He does. He actually shares his own experience with what he calls a fasting mimicking diet, where he severely restricts calories for a certain period. He talks about the potential benefits, but he's also pretty funny about it, noting how expensive some of those trendy diets are.
Yeah, sometimes those healthy choices can really break the bank. What about exercise? He seems to be a big advocate for that.
He is. He really emphasizes the importance of different types of exercise, cardio, strength training, flexibility. It's all about finding activities that you enjoy and that you can stick with.
Did he share any personal anecdotes about his exercise routine?
Oh, he did. He talked about his love of swimming and yoga, even touched upon cold water swimming, which has become very popular lately, but can be risky.
I'll stick to my warm pool for now. What about technology's role in health and aging? Did he explore that much?
He did. He talked about the potential of technology, especially artificial intelligence, to revolutionize healthcare. Early disease detection, personalized treatment plans, maybe even extending lifespan. It's a very exciting field.
It sounds like it, but of course there are also potential risks and ethical concerns.
Oh, absolutely. He acknowledges that. There are lots of unknowns. We need to make sure this technology is developed and used responsibly.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about a really interesting concept. He introduces the idea of a health pension. Can you explain what he means by that?
I love that analogy. It's basically this idea that we need to invest in our health just like we invest in a financial pension. We make contributions over time to secure our financial future. We should be doing the same for our health.
So building up those reserves of health and resilience.
Exactly. He says that creating this health pension involves those healthy habits, strong social connections, activities that bring us joy, things that contribute to overall well-being.
It's a holistic approach, recognizing that today's choices have a ripple effect on our future health and happiness.
It's a powerful reminder that we have so much power to shape our own aging process. It really is. And he encourages us to really view health not as this fixed state, but as a dynamic process we can influence with every choice we make, with every habit we form.
So we're not just passive passengers, we're actively shaking the journey. Now, moving on, the author has a rather amusing story about a medical test. He undergoes one that measures his heart's electrical activity.
Ah, the electrocardiogram, or ECG.
That's it. He recounts this fleeting sense of accomplishment when he first sees the results, because his heart rate is lower than he expected.
It's those little victories that keep us going, right?
Right. But his pride quickly dissipates when he realizes, well, his resting heart rate has actually gone up since his last checkup.
A little reality check. It reminds us that our bodies are constantly changing. We can't get complacent. We have to stay vigilant.
It is a good reminder to keep checking in with ourselves. And he describes trying all these different ways to measure his heart rate accurately, counting his pulse manually, borrowing his daughter's Fitbit, even digging out an old pulse oximeter from the pandemic.
Resourceful, to say the least.
Definitely. But sometimes those home methods aren't quite as precise as we'd like them to be. In the end, he had to accept that his resting heart rate wasn't quite as stellar as he initially thought.
It's a valuable lesson in humility and using data, even if it's not what we hoped for, as motivation to make positive changes.
Absolutely. Now he goes on to talk about the incredible workload the heart carries. He actually compared the volume of blood pumped by the heart every minute to the size of a compact car, or a classroom filled with children.
Wow, that really puts it into perspective.
It does. He then walks us through the anatomy of the heart. The four chambers, the intricate network of blood vessels, the whole circulatory system that keeps everything running smoothly.
A truly remarkable system, efficiently delivering oxygen and nutrients to every cell in the body.
And then he throws in this funny little fact that the actual anatomical heart looks nothing like that heart symbol we associate with love and emotions.
A reminder that scientific reality and cultural perceptions don't always align perfectly.
Exactly. Now he explores the impact of stress on our hearts, focusing on those two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol.
The dynamic duo of the fight-or-flight response, essential for survival in those acute moments of danger, but chronic activation can really take a toll on our cardiovascular system.
So finding healthy ways to manage stress is a crucial part of that health pension plan.
Absolutely. And he then shifts gears to talk about atherosclerosis, which is that gradual buildup of plaque in our arteries.
And of course, he emphasizes the role of LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and, wouldn't you know it, inflammation.
Inflammation always seems to find a way to sneak in, doesn't it?
It does, and he connects this back to your cholesterol levels, reminding us to be mindful of those individual cardiovascular risks.
Knowing their numbers empowers us to take action. And speaking of taking action, he marvels at the advancements we've made in heart surgery, from those early attempts to modern miracles like bypass surgery and pacemaker implantation.
Cardiac surgeons can do some truly amazing things these days.
He can, and even mentions cutting-edge research into actually growing new blood vessels in a lab using a patient's own cells.
The future of cardiovascular care sounds incredibly promising.
It does. And speaking of advancements, he goes on to recount the fascinating history of heart transplantation, starting with those early animal experiments and culminating in Christian Barnard's groundbreaking first human-to-human heart transplant back in 1967.
A true turning point in medical history.
It was. It gave hope to so many people struggling with end-stage heart failure, a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of medical innovation.
Okay, now he smoothly transitions from the heart's intricate workings to another vital system, the lungs, and our respiratory health.
Two systems working in perfect harmony to keep us alive, delivering that life-sustaining oxygen to our tissues and removing waste products.
He talks about his experience undergoing a spirometry test, which measures lung function.
Spirometry is an essential tool for assessing lung capacity and airflow, helps doctors diagnose and monitor a whole range of respiratory conditions.
And speaking of respiratory conditions, he goes on to discuss COPD, a chronic lung disease primarily caused by smoking, really emphasizing its impact on quality of life.
It's a major public health issue, and reducing smoking rates is absolutely critical for prevention.
He then delves into the history of air pollution, particularly in London, talking about that infamous 1952 Great Smog and the efforts to improve air quality since then.
It highlights how those environmental factors can have a profound effect on our respiratory health.
He even recounts a conversation he had with Professor Frank Kelly, an expert on air pollution. They discussed the changes in London's air quality over time and the ongoing challenges we face.
It emphasizes the importance of environmental awareness and those sustainable solutions. We need to protect our planet to protect our lungs.
Now, shifting focus a bit, he talks about the immune system's complex role in lung disease, how it can both protect us from pathogens and, if it's not working properly, contribute to tissue damage.
It's a delicate balance, that immune response, a powerful force for good, but it can also backfire.
He goes on to discuss hypersensitivity pneumonitis, a group of lung diseases triggered by inhaled particles and allergens.
He gives those intriguing examples. Pigeon fancier's lung, hot tub lung, illustrating how diverse those environmental triggers can be.
Okay, moving on to another prevalent health concern. He shares his own experience with skin cancer, emphasizing the importance of sun protection.
Skin cancer is incredibly common, but often preventable. Simple things, like wearing a sunscreen regularly, can make a huge difference.
And then he takes us on this fascinating little journey into the origins of the word cancer, tracing it back to Hippocrates, that ancient Greek physician who compared the spread of tumors to crab legs.
It's amazing how those ancient observations still resonate today.
It is. He then explains the basic principles of cancer: uncontrolled cell growth, invasion, metastasis, that ability of cancer to spread.
Cancer is a complex disease with many faces, and understanding its mechanisms is crucial for developing those effective treatments.
And of course, he talks about genetics, how some individuals are predisposed to certain cancers.
Genetic testing can provide those valuable insights into individual risk factors, but it's crucial to remember that our genes don't dictate our destiny.
We still have agency. And he reinforces the dangers of smoking, the fact that cigarette smoke is carcinogenic, all those harmful components: nicotine, carbon monoxide, tar.
Smoking remains one of the most significant preventable causes of death worldwide. Quitting is one of the most impactful health choices a person can make.
And he also talks about the link between diet and cancer, specifically the role of red meat consumption in colon cancer.
Our dietary choices can have a real impact on cancer risk. A balanced diet, rich in those fruits, vegetables, whole grains, is generally recommended for cancer prevention.
Now he introduces this really interesting concept: infectious cancer.
Where viruses can trigger the development of certain types of cancer. He talks about HPV, EBD, HPV as examples.
Viruses playing a role in cancer. That's incredible.
It's a growing area of research, and in some cases, vaccination can actually be a preventative measure.
Okay, moving on to treatment, he takes us through the history of cancer treatment. From those early surgical interventions to all the advancements we have now, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and immunotherapy.
Cancer treatment has come a long way. There's so much hope now and improved outcomes for so many patients.
And he highlights the groundbreaking work of James Allison and Tasuku Honjo. They won a Nobel Prize for their discovery of checkpoint inhibitors, a really powerful type of immunotherapy.
Checkpoint inhibitors are a game changer, harnessing the power of our own immune systems to fight cancer cells.
He also touches on those promising emerging treatments like therapeutic vaccines and CAR T-cell therapy. It seems like the future of cancer treatment is very bright.
It is so much potential. Now, shifting gears again, he dives into the brain, our emotions, our thoughts, our actions. He explores the complexities of this vital organ and the challenges of age-related cognitive decline.
It's amazing how much we're still learning about the brain. It's such an intricate network of neurons and glia, constantly adapting and evolving.
And as we age, those connections in the brain can change. He compares it to a map that gradually fades over time.
A poignant image. And of course, dementia is a big concern for many people. He provides a really clear definition of what dementia actually is.
Emphasizing that it's not just those occasional memory lapses, but a cluster of symptoms that include memory loss, cognitive impairment, difficulty with everyday activities.
A much broader picture than many people realize.
It is, and he meticulously outlines all the different types of dementia: Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, frontotemporal dementia, each with its own unique characteristics and challenges.
And he talks about the role of amyloid beta in Alzheimer's disease, that buildup in the brain, potentially triggering inflammation.
Amyloid beta is a hallmark of Alzheimer's, and understanding its role is central to finding effective treatments.
And again, we see that potential link between inflammation and dementia. He gives the example of HIV infection and how it can affect cognitive function.
It suggests that inflammation may be a contributing factor in some cases.
And then he addresses those brain training exercises and games that have become so popular. A lot of people wonder if they actually work.
He admits the research is inconclusive. It seems like they may offer some benefits, but they're not a foolproof solution for preventing dementia.
Not the magic bullet some people hope for. Now, venturing into the realm of diet and supplements, he expresses skepticism about those miracle diets and longevity potions that are always popping up.
He emphasizes the importance of relying on scientific evidence and personal experience, reminding us that our bodies are complex.
No quick fixes. He then introduces the concept of the microbiome, that vast community of bacteria living in and on our bodies.
The microbiome is an amazing ecosystem. It plays a role in so many bodily functions, and research is still ongoing, trying to understand its full impact on health and disease.
He even shares his own attempt to alter his gut microbiome through diet, using high-fiber foods and fermented foods.
It's a good example of how dietary interventions might be able to modulate the microbiome, but we need more research.
And he's very honest about the complexities of microbiome research, those challenges in interpreting data. We need more standardized methods.
It's a rapidly evolving field, and we need to be cautious about drawing conclusions and making those personalized recommendations.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift to metabolic health. He provides a really clear explanation of how insulin works to regulate blood sugar levels.
Insulin is essential for glucose metabolism, and when that signaling goes awry, it leads to diabetes.
He meticulously breaks down the differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, highlighting that type 1 is an autoimmune disease, while type 2 is often linked to those lifestyle factors.
Understanding those different underlying causes is essential for tailoring treatment and prevention strategies.
And then he delves into those dangers of blood sugar imbalances, both hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, and hyperglycemia, high blood sugar.
It's a delicate balance, and maintaining stable blood sugar is so important for overall health. Especially for individuals with diabetes, careful monitoring and management are crucial.
He explains that chronically high blood sugar can damage blood vessels, increasing the risk of heart disease, kidney problems, and many other complications.
It emphasizes how interconnected our bodies are.
Exactly. And then he explores the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes, again highlighting those lifestyle factors.
Obesity is a major risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes, and adopting a healthy lifestyle with a balanced diet and regular exercise can significantly reduce the risk.
And he acknowledges how challenging weight management can be, those social and personal factors that influence our relationship with food.
It's not just about willpower, it's about understanding those complex influences.
Now let's talk about some of those lifestyle interventions that can impact health and longevity. He discusses fasting, exercise, and the evolving role of technology in healthcare.
Our lifestyle choices have a huge impact on our health trajectory. Incorporating healthy habits can make a world of difference.
He shares his experience with what he calls a fasting mimicking diet, where he restricts calories for a set period of time. He discusses the potential benefits, but also those less glamorous aspects of, feeling hungry.
He definitely adds a touch of humor to the discussion, and he also points out the high cost of some of those trendy diets.
A good reminder that healthy doesn't have to mean expensive.
Exactly, and he goes on to emphasize those different types of exercise: cardiovascular training, strength training, flexibility.
Finding what we enjoy and what we can stick with is a key.
Absolutely. He talks about his love of swimming and yoga, even discussing those potential benefits and risks of cold water swimming.
I think I'll stick with a nice heated pool. But it's great that he's exploring all those different options.
It's about finding what works for you. And then, of course, he talks about technology, the potential for artificial intelligence to revolutionize healthcare.
Early disease detection, personalized treatment plans, maybe even extending lifespan.
It's an exciting field full of possibilities, but of course, we need to consider those ethical implications as well.
Right, make sure this technology is used responsibly. Now, before we move on to our final part, I want to bring up a really interesting concept he introduces, the Tithonus error.
Ah, yes. The cautionary tale from Greek mythology.
It's about this guy, Tithonus, who was granted immortality but not eternal youth. He ends up aging and declining for all eternity.
A stark reminder that simply living longer isn't enough. It's about the quality of those years, the experiences we have, the connections we make.
He emphasizes the importance of being present, savoring those moments, finding joy in the everyday rather than chasing after an elusive fountain of youth.
A powerful message about appreciating what we have right here, right now.
It is. He also stresses the importance of those social connections, finding purpose and meaning. He suggests these factors might actually be more important for longevity than any miracle cure.
Strong social bonds, a sense of belonging, a reason to wake up every morning, those things can have a profound impact on well-being and maybe even on how long we live.
Now, as we head into our final part, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this health pension concept. What resonates most with you about that analogy?
I think it beautifully captures this idea that our health is an investment, and the choices we make today really do impact our future well-being. Just as we put money aside for retirement, we should also be actively making deposits into that health pension account to safeguard our vitality as we age.
It's a wonderful way to frame it.
It reminds us that we have agency, that we can shape our own health destinies.
It's empowering. Okay, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive. We're going to explore those specific strategies for building a robust health pension and maximizing your chances of living a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life.
I'm excited to unpack those strategies. Let's dive in and see how we can really optimize that health pension plan for a vibrant future.
Okay, so the author starts by acknowledging that just saying eat less, exercise more isn't exactly revolutionary advice. We've all heard that before.
It's the classic mantra, but he wants to go deeper, explore those nuances and offer some fresh perspectives.
He talks about how our choices over time kind of lead to a gradual decline from our peak health, which, for most people is probably sometime in their mid-20s.
He describes it as this linear decay affecting various organs: our lungs, our brains, our hearts, our kidneys.
Like we're slowly but surely using up those reserves.
That's a great way to think about it. And that's where this health pension concept comes in, right?
If we make those investments early on, build up those reserves through those healthy habits, we'll be in a much better position to handle the aging process.
Exactly. We might not be able to stop aging completely, but we can definitely influence the rate at which we decline.
It's about maximizing those years of good health, that health span, not just focus on extending lifespan for the sake of it.
Quality over quantity, for sure. And he's a big believer in education and keeping our minds active as a way to maintain cognitive function.
He even talks about a study where they analyzed nuns' diaries from when they were young. They found a correlation between more complex language usage in those diaries and a lower risk of developing dementia later in life.
Fascinating, isn't it? Shows how powerful lifelong learning can be.
So keep those brains engaged. Read, learn new skills, challenge yourselves intellectually. It's an investment that pays off in the long run.
Now, let's move our attention to the body, to movement. He's a strong advocate for physical activity throughout life.
And he goes beyond just cardio. He talks about strength training, flexibility, especially as we get older.
He's actually pretty honest about his own struggle with flexibility. Talks about trying yoga after some injuries from higher impact activities.
It's a good reminder that we need to listen to our bodies and adapt our workouts as we age.
And that it's never too late to try new things. Never too late to discover the joys of yoga.
Now it's time to address a topic that often comes with a lot of, societal baggage: weight management.
It's a sensitive issue, and he approaches it thoughtfully.
He acknowledges that weight loss is a multifaceted challenge. It's not just about willpower.
He recounts his experiment with a fasting mimicking diet, talking about the potential benefits, but also the downsides of restricting calories. Like feeling hungry all the time.
Did he have any, like, profound revelations from that experience?
Well, he definitely learned a lot about the psychology of hunger and the cost of those fancy diets.
Always good to be mindful of the budget, but on a more serious note, he dives into the health risks associated with obesity.
Especially the link to type 2 diabetes. That's a major concern.
He explains how that excess weight can disrupt those insulin signals, leading to consistently high blood sugar.
And how that, in turn, can damage blood vessels, increasing the risk of heart disease, kidney problems, all sorts of complications.
It really underscores how everything is connected.
It does. Taking a holistic view of weight management is so important for our overall well-being.
Now, beyond diet and exercise, he talks about other lifestyle factors that contribute to longevity.
Sleep, stress management, strong social connections.
Those are the essential ingredients for a vibrant and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. He even mentions the Harvard study of adult development, which found that close relationships were a strong predictor of both happiness and well-being.
So nurture those relationships, folks. Spend time with loved ones. Build those meaningful friendships.
Surround yourselves with a supportive community. It makes a world of difference.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into your health and longevity, let's circle back to a key takeaway: the importance of embracing the present moment.
Right. He reminds us that while it's natural to think about our mortality, to want to extend our lives, it shouldn't overshadow the beauty of the life we're living right now.
Find joy in the little things. Cherish those relationships. Cultivate gratitude. Those are the things that truly matter.
Wise words, for sure. So with that in mind, let's distill this deep dive into 10 key takeaways tailored just for you. Ready?
Okay, hit me with those takeaways.
Here we go. Number 1, death is defined as the irreversible loss of consciousness and brainstem function. 2, aging is this complex process of accumulated damage, often accelerated by inflammation. 3, genetics provides the blueprint, but our environment and lifestyle choices really shape those health outcomes. 4, regular medical tests are crucial for understanding our current health status. 5, maintaining cardiovascular health requires a multifaceted approach: diet, exercise, stress management. 6, protecting respiratory health means avoiding smoking and minimizing exposure to pollutants. 7, understanding cancer is vital for early detection and effective intervention. 8, cognitive health is about staying mentally active and nurturing those social connections. 9, a balanced diet, regular exercise, and mindful weight management are essential for metabolic well-being. And 10, embracing those proactive health measures and nurturing those meaningful relationships contribute to a longer, healthier, and more fulfilling life.
Wow, that's a great summary. I feel like I've got a much better grasp on all this information now.
I'm glad to hear that. It's a lot to take in, but hopefully it feels empowering too.
It does, and it's a good reminder that this health pension is a lifelong endeavor. We need to start making those deposits early and consistently.
Absolutely. And never be afraid to seek guidance for healthcare professionals or, those people who inspire you to live a healthier life.
Great advice. This has been a truly enlightening deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found it valuable. Remember, keep those minds curious, those bodies moving, and those hearts full of joy. Until next time, take care.